Welcome. We're happy you're watching this video so that you can learn more about our sacred space, which is the heart of our campus, our Mater Dei Chapel. And today we have some very special guests with us to give you more information and really the heart of the story of what gave birth to this sacred space on our campus. Judy?
I'm Judy Dettenwanger Ebler. I graduated in 1961, and I was one of the 3 women students who were chosen to produce and design the art that is in this beautiful chapel.
I'm Sister Judith Metz. I'm a Sister of Charity, and I'm the historian for our congregation.
And my name is Maddie Williams, and I'm a historic preservationist working with Mount St. Joe in creating a National Register of Historic Places application.
So Judy, tell us the story of how the chapel was created, how the 3 of you students, what were the names of the students and the sisters that were a part of this project.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know whether the idea came from Sister Augusta or whether it was from Sister Marie Corona, who was the dean and president at the time. But the 2 of them both had to agree on it, I know. Sister Augusta placed so much confidence in the students that had been trained here. That was myself, Peggy Rolfus Bruns, Marlene Hoffman, the 3 of us. The way they chose us was, for our final project senior year, we were assigned to do something, whatever we wanted, to produce for the new chapel that was going to go up. This was a brand new, whole entire campus. I chose to do an idea for the crucifix, and I made it out of clay, I think it was about 7 feet tall, so not nearly as tall as what we have here. I don't think Marlene originally did the design for the windows, but Sister liked her other artwork, and especially the painting that Sister Augusta had taught us, and she thought she had a wonderful sense of color. And Peg was chosen to do the Stations of the Cross for the same reason that she was a fine artist and had a lot of color sense. I was not a painter. I've never been a painter. To this day, I do not paint. I only work with my hands and do 3-dimensional things. There were, I think, 7 or 8 of us in the class, and the 3 of us were chosen to do the work. We were actually paid, and we were so excited. It was the first thing any of us had been paid to do for any kind of art, and it was such a monumental privilege to be able to do this. Right after graduation, we started working. I did the crucifix in oil clay because it was going to be so large. Sister Augusta had the maintenance men do the basis for it made out of metal. There were rods, and then there was a big square thing for the body and another thing for the head, so that it wouldn't take just clay, and so that I'd have something to build on that would support it. When the clay was all finished, I have to say one thing. Sister Augusta watched what we were doing and oversaw that especially the sizes and the kind of things that she wanted, so that what our work would go together and look like it belonged together. She oversaw that part of it. But for the most part, she didn't really put any kind of restrictions on how we could design our work, except for one thing. When Jesus was all finished, in my opinion, she came in and took this big tool that I had and slashed where the ribs were that I had made rounded, and made them in an angular way. And she said, Sister Augusta always did this when she was working with students. This wants to be like this. So, and she was right. It matched the rest of it, and the angles and the way that I had done it. But that was really all she did, was Jesus wanted his ribs to be more angular.
So that's what we see here then, in the final?
Yes, that's the way it is. Then I put shims all over the clay so that I could make a plaster mold that could come off cleanly. I put the mold together, put in pieces. The head was separate, the body was separate, the arms and the legs. Then I put a liquid inside of the mold so that it would release, and filled it with plaster so that then I took a hammer and chisel and knocked the outside off. So we had a finished copy of the corpus in plaster. And while I was doing that, of course, Marlene was working on the windows, and she designed every one of these windows full scale. She did a small one first and then had a piece of paper that was as long as the windows are tall. And went in Marion Hall up on the second or third floor and let it down so she could see how it was going to look. And then she and I went to West Virginia to Blanco Glass to pick out the colors, the actual pieces that were going to be there. We went with the man who was going to actually produce the windows. Marlene couldn't do all that by herself. So we had a professional whose name I sadly do not remember the name of the company. But the sisters would not allow Marlene to travel to West Virginia on her own with this man. So I went with them, and it was wonderful. I enjoyed it so much, seeing how they made glass. These were all hand-rolled pieces of glass with the colors mixed in within the glass. And while we were there, they were making this orange and red and yellow thick glass. And that was not part of the original plan, but when Marlene saw that, she decided that that had to be someplace in this chapel. So that's how those got here. I think the colors of the stations and the windows are just meant to be together. They're just really beautiful. They're so alive. I have a little story that I don't know if you're going to want to keep in about the other liturgical artists in Cincinnati. After we were all finished with this, I joined the liturgical arts group in Cincinnati, and I did some more liturgical work. But there was one man who was very famous. And one day I was with him and I said, have you ever gone out to the Mount to see the chapel? And he said to me, no, and I never will. A bunch of women should not have done that chapel.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Which is exactly why it needs to be on the National Register of Historic Places.
Yes.
God bless him.
In 1960, 61, you know, the sisters had to be thinking about it beforehand when they started planning. This whole campus was brand new, and they had to be thinking about who would do the chapel. And I'm sure Mr. Kepnick's name came up. He had done so many churches in the Cincinnati and Dayton area. And he never, ever, ever badmouthed the women. He was, I would not be surprised if he was part of choosing who would do the corpus, because he was the one who taught sculpture.
And who was this again?
Robert Kepnick.
Okay, the sculptor, right?
Yeah, sculpture.
Yeah.
Sister Augusta had to have had tremendous confidence in her senior students that she would think that they were capable of doing this.
Was this the first chapel that you know of that was completed by women, females?
It's the only one I know of.
Yeah, I haven't heard of another one, and I haven't either. I was just curious at that time if it was common or if you had heard of other
It
chapels.
was not even common for women to do liturgical art at the time.
Okay.
The liturgical arts group was almost all men.
Well, and Josh Zeller, who's one of our research librarians, actually did the research. And of all of the, I believe it's 273 Catholic colleges and universities in this country, this is the only one that was created by 6 women, essentially. 3 Sister of Charity who were professors and 3 undergraduate students. And when you look at the magnitude of the size of this space, but like Sister Judy says, everything Sister Augusta did was big. She worked on big scale projects. But I love to say to our new students, like, this chapel, and I always tell them that it was created by our students and 3 of our Sister of Charity faculty members. This demonstrates clearly that Mount St. Joseph University believes in the gifts and the talents of our students. We know that they can do great things now, not someday when you graduate,
Right.
not someday when you, but right now. And obviously, Sister Maria Corona Malloy and Sister Augusta Zimmer had that same belief that you can do this now.
Yeah.
And I just think what that speaks is the art itself is inspiring with its beauty and its magnitude and magnificence, but what it speaks from the heart of how the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati believed and still believe in the gifts and talents of young people, I think speaks volumes. To me, that's the most important message that the chapel speaks. And yet, you said you're not a painter, and yet you did the painting in the
Yes, but
baldacchino.
that's an easy thing.
Can you talk a little bit about the canopy and how that came
well,
about?
Do you know why there's a baldacchino over the altar? Because in the Middle Ages, the doors were always open and the birds would fly in, and they put that up there so that the birds wouldn't poop on the altar.
I did not know that.
Liturgical art is functional.
Yes, really.
So I'd have to look at it to tell you all the things, because that was 60 years ago, but they're all symbols of the Eucharist, the Mass.
Okay. And then how did you choose the color palette? Was that
Well,
just
to go
sort
with
of
the colors,
to fit in
yes.
with the
Uh-huh,
windows
yeah.
and the mosaic? It fits beautifully.
And it's very 60s art.
Yes, it
I mean,
is
if you-
60s.
If you were alive in the 60s, which I know you weren't, that kind of art was very predominant.
And the windows are too. I mean, you can tell if you see stained glass windows like this, they're late 50s, early 60s.
Yes. And the way that these women depicted the art in such a way that it doesn't just inspire the cultural significance of the 60s, but it transcends the time. And I think when you look at the symbols, I feel pretty certain that when they painted what looks like the Torah, that maybe that was Peg that did the windows.
No, that was Marlene.
Marlene probably didn't have in her head, I want to make sure that I include the Judeo-Christian heritage or the monotheistic religions because you see the crescent moon. She probably did that as a symbol of Mary. And yet today when we see it, it's like the 3 Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, are all represented. And that's what I love about art and theological symbols, because they transcend time. And the meaning is so profound that you really can't even express all of it.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, what's something that this chapel does. And I also think that was what was so inspiring, and the love that I hear our alums, especially our alumnae, express for the Sisters of Charity. Because the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati sponsored the school, they taught in the school, they cared for the school, they cared for the young women, and they had the attitude of, you don't have to just be a housewife.
Right.
You're an artist. You don't just have to be a housewife, you're a historian. Those sisters helped these women to believe that they could achieve their dreams.
Was that something you think that was local, the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati, or was that, did that start way back in Maryland? And did that start with that way of thinking? Was that always with them?
Well, I think it's typical of many, especially American communities of sisters. I mean, these women sent sisters to the battlefields.
Yes.
You know, these women ran hospitals.
Yes.
They were administrators of colleges and high schools and fancy academies in some cases, you know, but I mean, they were used to dealing with the public. They were used to being in professional roles. And so there isn't any reason why they wouldn't think that the people going through their college would be able to do the same thing.
Yes.
Right.
So they were always forward thinkers, it sounds.
I would
starting
say.
with Mother
Well, and even when the student came who had graduated from the academy, that's the precursor to the university, and told the sisters, I can't get a job. My academy certification or diploma doesn't qualify me to teach in Indiana. And so the sisters did the paperwork for the state of Ohio, and you know, you think about it,
Okay, we'll found a
we'll found a college. We'll make this work. Only 1 month after the 19th Amendment. I mean, you think about it, women didn't even have the right to vote when they were birthing this idea of a college.
And the statues, I didn't talk about those. I did St. Joseph, and Sister Augusta designed Mary, but Peggy actually produced the statue from her design. One thing I didn't know, you see those wooden crosses with each of the stations?
Yes.
It's some kind of a liturgical rule that you have to have a wooden cross with a station.
Yes.
I didn't know that until we did those.
Okay, so those are original as well?
They were there, yes. But they can be incorporated, but they weren't, so they had to put the wooden ones up all around. And after Peg and Marlene finished their work, they kept me on for a little while. I designed the lamps and the doors on the confessionals.
You know, the amount of detail, like the mosaic or the stained glass windows or the Stations of the Cross, require, it seems like a really fast timeline that you turned this over.
Yeah.
While you were still students, you were still
No,
taking...
we weren't students.
Oh, I thought you were...
This was after we
okay,
graduated.
So you were working full-time.
Yeah.
It still seems like a fast timeline.
Yeah, it was fast.
Well, at the end of the book that you wrote, I love that you put the pictures in, and where you said this was the greatest accomplishment. That really, that brought tears to my eyes. Say a little bit, because you're an artist and you've been creating art your entire life.
Well, you know, as I got older and found out how hard it was to get a job or, you know, a commission, I did have some more commissions for a while, but I was kind of overwhelmed with the fact that sisters put so much trust in people who had not had commissions when they had all these men that they could have hired to do the same work. And the forethought that they had to, you know, test us by having us do something, first of all, to show what we were capable of doing at the end of our 4 years of training. And of course, it's all due to the training that we had here. I didn't have any art preparation before I came to the mountain.
Really? So when you were designing, were you sort of aware of this mid-century modern movement happening in design? Or you were just a part of it and just thinking that, oh, these sort of colors of our time period, or were the colors more reflective?
I think the colors reflect what was happening right at that time.
Because this sort of the ambers and the oranges are very sort of the 1960s, but I'm always curious when designing in a period, in a style period, if you realize you're in that period or if you're just...
Yeah. Well, the way the cames are done, some thick and some thin, and the black lines and everything, that's very much early 60s.
And was there a conscious choice of, you know, the body of the church being blue, and then the sanctuary
I know
area
that
being
much is
gold?
true, yeah.
That's what I always tell people.
And
but
that was pre-Vatican II, but that was really what Vatican II said, that the emphasis is up here. It's not back there.
They really tie the space in together, I feel, especially when you have such beautiful stained glass. For me, I'm always looking up because there's
Yes.
so much detail. And so you're drawn upwards anyway, and to see those light fixtures, I think it really completes the overall feel of the building. So every
Yeah.
detail was thought out meticulously, and it
Yes.
shows.
I like the multicultural spirituality that's present, with that and
And
the
speaking
crescent.
of that, I bet that Sister Augusta had a hand in the multicultural thing. I don't think Marlene would have thought of that.
But Sister Augusta's travel, I think, really
Yeah, I bet
influenced
she
her.
suggested to her that, I mean, what she didn't do was design what it looked like.
Yes.
She didn't say, well, here's what this should look like and here's what that, but I would not be surprised to know that it was her influence that put that in there.
I mean, I would think she had to have been helped just with, maybe with books or whatever, to understand the liturgicals and biblical symbolism. I mean, to me, somebody that was just not a theology major in
Yeah.
college would probably not be that aware of that.
Well, even the inclusivity of the Latin on this side of the Rex
Yeah.
Gloria, the Agnus Dei, Lux Mundi, and then on this side, the Greek. Jesus conquers.
Yeah.
It's just Christ is King.
Right.
I just love all the inclusion of this chapel. I mean, today we talk about DEI and it's front of mind, but this space created in the 60s has inclusivity in the design. I mean, it's there, it's present. They didn't talk about it, but it's there. Again, I think that speaks to, I think art is inspired. Now, you're the artist, so correct me, but I really do think that when you do art for a sacred space, there's a
It's
amount
totally
of prayer.
different, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know when I enter this space, going back to sort of praying as you're writing or creating, from the moment I stepped in here, I felt those prayers that were put into each piece of all these pieces of art. You can feel it when you walk into the space, and it stays with you. It's amazing. And I think there are very few, and I've been to cathedrals all over the world, and there's something special about this space that you can just feel the spirituality and the love, and
I'm getting chills.
well, I got chills when I came in here for the first time. I mean, Sister Karen knows it
Yes.
took my breath away. So
Thank you.
you are welcome. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Yeah, this has been wonderful.
It has been a privilege.
Yeah.